Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Monday, another episode of the Best Games Period. This week we have another honorable mention for you, and this one's gonna be a bit different. Not gonna lie, this game, I'm putting it up there as an honorable mention, not because it's good, and I think that might be an interesting thing to just come right out of the gates and say. Super Godzilla is not a good game. I doubt most people who played it might even remember it, but for a number of reasons, it's a game that is very near and dear to my heart, and I find it fascinating, and my mind keeps going back to it over the years, and I periodically pop it in and replay it. So, what is Super Godzilla, and why am I talking about it? Well, it is a Super Nintendo game starring Godzilla, which you might have guessed that from the title Super Godzilla. Super Godzilla is this strange game from 1994, and in my youth, I was obsessed with it. I played this thing like crazy. And it certainly had to do with the fact that I, as a person, am totally obsessed with Godzilla. I've seen every single Godzilla film. Haven't seen the Netflix series yet. Will get to it eventually. I'm just not a huge fan of that animation. But I played Super Godzilla like crazy. And the main takeaway I have from that experience now as an adult looking back is that I probably had poor gaming tastes as a child, and also that Super Godzilla is one of the strangest games I've ever played from a design perspective. So let me lay this out here, because basically, if you look through the articles that are on Extra Life, or I'm sure I've written about it on my Game Informer blog at some point in the past, but every few years I get this itch to talk about Super Godzilla because there's so many people who have never played it, and who never will play it, and it's not going to be a game that will ever be featured on a re-release of a SNES Classic, or an SNES Classic 2, if there's a hypothetical second one. But it's so bizarre, and I feel the need to convey that to people. And I think that bizarreness is why I at least want to have it as an honorable mention, because there's literally nothing else like it. It has a series of systems that are baffling, and it's kind of insane that anyone ever put them together in the first place. And it makes the game so unique that I am actually nominating it as an honorable mention in this episode, as just something that's worth checking out if you are really interested in the history of game design, and maybe what not to do, and also maybe if you want some interesting ideas for a game you're working on, or something like that. So, Super Godzilla, released in 1994 for the Super Nintendo, it has a vague storyline, and the storyline is basically that the people of Earth are tired of getting trampled by Godzilla every so often, and so they go and implant a computer chip in Godzilla's brain, and that computer chip allows them to kind of control Godzilla's movement and essentially make him a giant walking puppet of destruction, which you might think would be a very contentious thing on the international stage, but it's not. And luckily that happens because a bunch of aliens invade and also abduct all the world's monsters that aren't Godzilla and start sending them to attack various cities around Japan. As the team of scientists that control Godzilla, you have to move Godzilla around to engage these enemy monsters. And you might think like this would be a cool premise for like an action game, maybe a side-scrolling beat-em-up or some kind of fighting game. And there are plenty of Godzilla fighting games out there that are actually pretty interesting and decent. Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee is pretty fun. There's There's actually a fighting game that I believe released on the Famicom, or maybe the Super Famicom, that starred Godzilla, that was supposedly very excellent, but I haven't had a chance to play it, which is disappointing to this day. However, what Super Godzilla plays like is nothing like any of those things. So there are a couple phases of the game, and the first phase, you drop as Godzilla into a map. The screen is divided into a top half and a bottom half, and on the bottom half is this grid map. And on that map, Godzilla is represented by a giant blue dot, and every second and a half, Godzilla moves one place on the grid, moves over one square. And each of those squares can be filled by a different type of terrain. It could be shallow water, deep water, trees, mountains, buildings, whatever. And you have to navigate around these maps with the goal of defeating the red dot monster that is hidden somewhere on the map, and you need to kind of explore and find that monster in order to fight and defeat them. And they're also filled with different colored squares that represent items or locations. And so you kind of want to move through these grid areas and find as many items as possible, because they'll help you out later in the second half of the game. And you also will occasionally get into these random encounters with enemy monster minions or alien UFOs, mostly alien UFOs. And that brings you into the second part of the game. And that part of the game is set up like a side-scrolling... Oh, wait. So all that's going on the bottom half of the screen. The top half of the screen is entirely devoted to these very detailed pixel art animations of Godzilla moving around, crashing through mountains, destroying buildings, etc., depending on where you're moving on the grid. And that's interesting. It's not... I don't know, it seems almost like something that you might even see on a DS, because of the split screen nature of it. But it was in 1994, so far before the DS came out. But so that's kind of what's going on in that first half of the game. Then you get into these random encounters. Again, similar dual screen setup. So the top half of the screen is set up as a fighting game. There is a sprite for Godzilla and a sprite for whatever Godzilla happens to be fighting. UFO, monster, whatever. And but the thing is, there are only two moves. You can move, 3 moves. You can move forward. No, sorry, 4 moves. You can move forward, you can move backward, you can punch, and you can block. And that does not seem like it would make for a very compelling fighting game. And you'd be right. However, that is not really the primary thing going on in these fights. So the bottom half of the screen is taken up with, the respective health meters of Godzilla and his enemy, and then you also have a square in the middle where you can pause and kind of bring up items, and that's where they show up. And then there are also these 2 bars that the game helpfully describes as fighting spirit. Now, what fighting spirit might be, or what gameplay mechanic it might have, is never really described, and you kind of have to figure it out for yourself. But basically, what it means is you want to get Godzilla's fighting spirit as high as possible before you punch the enemy right on the jaw, or in the metal carcass, metal hull. Because that, and again, this is never explained, so you have to figure it out for yourself. Then you have to walk Godzilla's character model backwards across the screen, and as you do that, in the middle, this square tile will start revealing different tiles, and one might be Godzilla's tail, and if you press the A button or Y button or one of the buttons, that will be an attack that is performed. So if it's a tail, it'll be a tail whip attack, and you'll get a short animation of Godzilla roaring and then like shifting and smashing the enemy with his tail. If it's a picture of like Godzilla's body, it will be a body slam. If it's a picture of Godzilla breathing fire breath, it'll be a fire breath attack. And then there's also a super fire breath attack version that you can get if it's really, really high. And that is probably one of the most bizarre fighting systems I've ever seen in anything ever. I don't know why anyone would design it that way and also not explain it very well. What ends up happening, so when you block in the top half of the screen, when you block, that brings down Godzilla's fighting spirit. And when you get hit by the enemy and you're blocking, that also brings down Godzilla's fighting spirit. And if you get hit and you're not blocking, the enemy monster can do their own set of attacks, but they just do them instantly without having to back up. So that results in these weird combats where you have to strategize around this very foreign alien set of rules. And it can be kind of frustrating, especially because, 1994, if you lose all your lives or continues, you start over at the beginning. So it's a real frustrating learning curve. But eventually, you come to the conclusion that, you usually don't get the chance from the enemy monsters to back up all the way and get that precise attack you want. So it's usually best to just go with like the first or second thing that pop up, whatever those might be. It's such a weird game, and I don't know if I'm adequately describing it, but it becomes kind of this road trip through famous 90s Godzilla monster locations and scenes. You fight King Ghidorah, you fight Mechagodzilla, there's a fight against Batra, there's a fight against Biolante, if you remember Biolante, this giant fusion of a rose and Godzilla that... and I'm not making this up. They actually, the Toho, the company that holds the rights to Godzilla, actually had a writing campaign for fans, and fans would submit ideas for what the next monster in their movie would be, and it was the winning selection was actually this giant rose combined with Godzilla's cells to create this horrific vine monster that also has some weird telepathic powers, I guess. Seriously, if you have not watched any Godzilla movies, I highly recommend you go out and watch some, because they are usually either so bad they're good, or middlingly genuinely entertaining. And so you might be wondering if Super in Super Godzilla actually refers to anything in the game. Surprisingly, it does. So one of the main points of Super Godzilla is that these aliens are kind of presenting this ever-escalating series of challenges, and towards the end of the game, there is a situation where Mecha King Ghidorah shows up, and the aliens challenge Godzilla and the people controlling Godzilla to find these experimental serums around the city, and if you can find all of them before Mecha King Ghidorah destroys 50% of the city, then you wind up transforming into Super Godzilla, which is a more powerful form of Godzilla that includes like spikes on the side of his mouth and the kind of edgy stuff you'd expect from 1994. Um, and that has never been shown in any other game since. I believe it's unique to Super Godzilla, which is a shame. I would love to see little nods to the more obscure things like Super Godzilla in more mainline Godzilla things, but that's fine. And it also starred as a final boss a monster that has only ever been shown in Super Godzilla, named Bagan. And Bagan isn't terribly interesting, so I understand why they didn't really show him. It was basically like the aliens that had invaded Earth are basically like, oh crap, Godzilla destroyed all of our other monsters. Let's go resurrect this other monster that's on Earth that has never been mentioned before. And then Godzilla also beats Bagan. The end. It's not a sweeping narrative that will, it's not a narrative that will sweep you off your feet by any means. It's not even again, the actual story elements in this game fall very in line with the rest of the Godzilla film series in that it's just so bad it's laughable. Like, nothing is explained. Nothing that the characters do makes any sense. Like, they have a foolproof way to control Godzilla. At the very end of the game, if you beat it, the team that has been controlling Godzilla this entire time and has successfully saved the planet decide that this transmitter, we need to destroy it. Maybe you'll need that again. What if Godzilla wakes up and destroys, your entire country because you weren't able to stop him before? Even this alien race that can travel through space very, very well, this hyper-advanced species, couldn't stop Godzilla. Might want to hold on to that transmitter a little bit there. But even more so than that, the actual mechanics of this game are just so baffling. And I've played through this game, I don't even know how many times, and it still baffles me. It's crazy that it exists, quite frankly. I don't know why anyone would design a game this way. I don't know why. I don't know how it passed through any kind of editorial process, but since it does exist, and I've played it, and I continue to think about it, there is a part of me that is just like, hey, this is a unique part of video game history. I'm not by any means arguing that it is a best game, period, but I will throw it up there as an honorable mention just for the sheer fact of how weird and obscure and unrepeated it is. Like, it's very original. There's nothing else like it. And I hope that I've been able to kind of convey that to you. Because, again, who sets up a fighting game that does not use fighting game mechanics, that uses instead a weird randomized tile base system? It's almost like an RPG, except you're not getting experience or anything. You're not leveling up. It's very strange. And there is a universe I can see where maybe someone comes along and plays Super Godzilla and sees that there is somewhere in that entire concept a tiny grain of potential. I can see it vaguely that someone would be able to turn these basic mechanics into something that's really fun and actually makes sense and could even conceivably be a good game. And I feel like it would probably be some indie developer, working on the 3DS or something like that. But I think it's doable. So you know what? If this by some chance happens to be listened to by an indie game developer out there, play Super Godzilla, and as like a Ludum Dare or a a game jam challenge, I point at you, indie game developer, make a good game based off of the mechanics of Super Godzilla, because I bet that it can be done. I just don't have a clear idea of how that would be, but I think it would be at the very least interesting, especially because I'm probably one of the very few people on the planet who actually remembers Super Godzilla and knows about the mechanics. And you could catch a lot of people by surprise if you actually went and did this concept well. Or even just took some aspects of it and used them in a different kind of game. Like I was saying, you could probably make a really interesting RPG using some of those fighting mechanics. Or maybe even like a tactical game using the real-time grid mechanics. It's very, I don't know, there are possibilities there. And I'm not gonna try and spitball an idea for an indie game on this podcast, because Lord knows no one wants to hear that. So that's all I got for this week, folks. Next week we'll try and be back with something interesting. Maybe I'll even be able to finagle Indy Jones back on the show. Daniel, my boon companion. So stay tuned, and thank you for listening. And I suppose I need to actually end the show in a more traditional manner. So if you actually want to follow us on Twitter, or please, you can find us. If you actually want to follow us on Twitter, you can find us over on @bestgames_. You can also find us over on Patreon, where we would appreciate, just throw us $1 per month. And we really appreciate everyone who does that. It actually does help the show pretty much more than anything else. Like, that's what helps us keep this thing going. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone who has actually participated and thrown us $1 per month that way, and also for commenting on our posts there and giving us good feedback. I know a couple of the shows that we have planned coming up have come from our patrons, so I'm thinking maybe Limbo might be up there. I don't think we've done that yet, and that would be a good one to do. It kind of really set the tone for scared lonely kid in a big scary world type of indie game. So anyway, that's my shout out for our Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/bestgames. And you can also find this very podcast over on Extra Life. To be specific, community.extra-life.org, where you can find a bunch of interesting articles about games, as well as this very podcast. You can also find us over on SoundCloud, and you can download our episodes on Libsyn. And we encourage everyone, if you use iTunes, leave us a review on iTunes. That really does help the show kind of get out to more people. And I also just want to, I don't usually do this, but I want to give a shout out to last week's episode, which was episode 86, featuring Kazuma Hashimoto. I really hope that I said that right without him here to correct my pronunciation. I'm trying my best. I'm so sorry. I also had a problem pronouncing the word bag for a very long time. And bagel. I did not say that right. I didn't say either of those words right for a very long time, and I hopefully have fixed that by now. So I'm doing my best at the pronunciation thing. But you should all go listen to that episode, because he and I had a really great long discussion about Catherine, and I thought it turned out really well, and we both had interesting things to say about the game, and kind of spiral that conversation out into a larger discussion about criticism and intent and all kinds of great stuff. So that was a really good episode. I really liked it. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Kaz. And with that, you might have heard me mention Extra Life in there. If you don't know what Extra Life is, boy, have I got something for you. So, Extra Life is basically this awesome charity. It's part of Children's Miracle Network hospitals, and essentially people just play games across the United States and Canada. They get together with friends and family, collect donations and pledges from them, and then play games together. And you raise money for sick and injured kids in hospitals. And when you sign up over at extra-life.org, you can actually choose which Children's Miracle Network hospital you want to support, and 100% of everything you raise goes directly to that hospital to help sick and injured kids. It's really fantastic, really great charity. Highly recommend you all check it out. And with that being said, I'll be seeing all of you on the Flippity Dippity.